giving you the insider takes and the big picture view on the Dogs. This is On the Beat, presented by Ingles, with DawgNation insider Mike Griffith and Cody Chaffins.
Happy Monday to you, everybody. Cody Chaffins and Mike Griffith with you, and we are in studio together. And here's the true story on this. So Mike, I came in, he's wearing a jacket. To go out to my car and get a jacket. I wasn't going to be upstage, but happy to have you in studio. And what a day to be inside, right? We've done so many of these shows outside this year. It is frigid out there.
Well, we're celebrating, right? It's the postseason. We got a new upgraded look here as Georgia gets ready to play in the Sugar Bowl. We got to raise our game up a little bit this month.
Yeah, we'll be here. We got one more show Christmas week, and then we're off to New Orleans, where who knows where we'll do the show and what we'll look like as we get ready for that. A lot to get to on today's show. Got another special guest coming up, Chris Doring in the SEC Network. Going to break down how he would see Georgia making a national championship run. He makes the case for the Dogs. Looking forward to that. We've got a very special boots on the ground today. Well, we show you some video, tell you a great story that our Jeff Sintel did some reporting on this week. We'll do that. Also answer an injury question that a lot of folks are wondering about. We'll show you some exclusive video on that as well regarding Colby Young. So we'll have all of that stuff. But first, as we are in this kind of week before we know Georgia's opponent officially, I'm sure in Athens, GA, they are preparing for both Ole Miss and Tulane. We can probably guess who they're preparing for most. But we've got kind of this off week, and so I thought we'd spend a little time this week looking back. Preseason, we sat down here in the summer and we did our list of superlatives, our Georgia players who were be most likely to whatever, or, you know, the dog who is the most impactful, whichever. And so we had our whole list. And at the time, Mike and I decided we'd probably be about 50% correct. And what's interesting about this is we revisited the list about halfway through the season. And as we revisit it now, it's actually changed because this Georgia team is not who this Georgia team was at the halfway point of the season.
Well, there have been a lot of changes, you know, and Kirby Smart told us at the start of the year that they were going to have to grow up. They were going to have to grow from the bottom on up, all those young players. And it was hard to envision some of these guys' names, these freshmen coming in, even sophomores, developing into prominent roles, into superstar roles. Cody, that started at the quarterback position. Not a freshman or sophomore, but I don't think either one of us saw Gunnar Stockton in the top 10 of the Heisman voting.
No, the way he finished there this year was really, really impressive. And we thought he would be important as we go through the list. You'll see, we thought he was going to be important, but I don't think we thought he would take it to that level, which is something, I don't think anybody saw preseason. He was like the 8th or 9th guy in the SEC preseason.
At that.
And now he's the 8th or 9th guy in the country, which is really impressive.
Yeah, overall, you know, you take it, and especially if you look at what Gunnar did in the fourth quarter of football games. I mean, this guy's touchdown interception ratio was 15-2 against Power 4 teams with a winning record. That's better than any of the Heisman finalists. His numbers, rushing numbers, second only to Diego Pavia's in those game situations. Gunnar Stockton was the best quarterback in the nation against winning teams and in the fourth quarter. And that's when it matters most, and that's why we're sitting here with Georgia as two-time SEC champions.
The other thing about it is, if he didn't win the Heisman, he wasn't going to show us behind like some people
Nothing
did.
On the Instagram from Gunnar Stockton.
No, he's nice. And you know what? He may be in New York next year. He comes back a year from now. Boy, he's definitely going to be one of the favorites in this offseason.
No doubt. He'll go into the season as a Heisman Trophy frontrunner. And at Georgia, Cody, and we've seen this before, Kirby tells the team goals come first and the individual accolades follow. Now, we did see that in special teams. We saw Bo Gardner win the Long Snapper of the Year award. We saw Brett Thorson very deservedly win the Ray Guy award. Peyton Woodring, his numbers are unbelievable. Yeah. Oklahoma kicker had just an unbelievable year, but still, you had another guy who was certainly worthy of the Luke Groza. I made the case. I still don't know how Zachariah Branch isn't first-team All-SEC. He led the league in receptions, and no, his overall yardage wasn't the highest. But if you look at yards after the catch and how much work he did on those short throws, no one comes close. And certainly without him, I don't think Georgia wins the SEC championship.
What an incredible segue. Mike is in the studio. We're doing real studio stuff. We have segued now to the first category we had in our superlatives. Was most likely to convert a 3rd and 7. In preseason, who none of us had seen Zachariah Branch. We only knew that he had a really good freshman year, but a really down sophomore year at Southern Cal. And so none of us knew for sure what it was going to be. But boy, on a 3rd and 7, you said it preseason, there's no guy I'm getting the ball to more than number 1.
Well, you could see that in the G-Day game, that he was going to be a go-to guy. And you love the joystick quickness, the moves. You saw that touchdown against Alabama where he just somehow, like Matrix-like fashion, Cody shifts direction, sprints upfield. I mean, this guy has a lot to handle. They know he's coming, and they still can't stop number one.
I wonder this year, as we start to get in transfer portal times, is there a guy, can Georgia do that again? I mean, because I think about, he has made Mike Bobo's screen game look so impressive. I don't know that can you count on that year after year?
Well, I think it's more like Mike Bobo has found the screen game to make use of Zachariah Branch's talents. I mean, this Georgia offensive play, it's not like there's a playbook here, and they got a playbook with everything in it. And obviously, when Brock Bowers was here, wow, they had a lot of great tight end plays. Well, now you got a split end like Zachariah Branch, a slot guy, but he can also go downfield, by the way. You find ways to put the ball in the hands of it's not rocket science. Put the ball in the hands of your playmakers. Do not make mistakes. That's where we've seen Gunnar Stockton grow. But boy, anytime that Zachariah Branch touches the ball, he is a threat to take it to the house.
He's the guy that, even in this slow-mo video, he looks fast.
And here's that play.
Really impressive. Yeah, against Alabama, as he finds pay dirt once again. Nobody can get a hand on him. Really great fake, by the way, by Cash Jones on that play. If you watch the TV copy and you watch 32, Cash Jones was a guy we had mentioned on third down. He's still a third down back for the Dogs. I had mentioned Lawson Lucky as a guy to most likely to convert a 3rd and 7. He's been a solid contributor, but just not on that Zachariah Branch level.
Well, you couldn't have seen it coming. You had to know what Georgia was going to do. And think about this too. Kirby talked about the importance of the run game. And sure enough, this offensive line has developed and done a nice job. And the run numbers are markedly better than last year. But when you think about this quote unquote screen game, quick pass game, it is an extended handoff. It serves the same purpose, especially when you consider Zachariah Branch had one drop pass all year long. It's an extended handoff. You're getting the ball in space to a playmaker. Serves the same purpose because it's short. He's got to make those yards after the catch, but serves the same purpose as the run game.
All right, moving on. So most likely to get a sack, you said Chris Cole. Exactly right. Leads the team in 4 sacks. I said C.J. Allen also leads the team with 4 sacks. C.J., I feel like, has come on late with some of those blitzes, which we saw a lot in the Texas game last year. I feel like we saw it in the SEC championship again this year. But Chris Cole, he has been what Georgia needed him to be after losing Jalen Walker. No, he's not Jalen Walker, but boy, he's been really, really good, especially in the pass rush.
Yeah, and Cody, I feel like Chris Cole is just now scratching the surface of what he can do. Remember at the start of the year, they were saying, hey, we're going to need Chris Cole to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit. He's been kind of the Band-Aid in some different parts of the defense as the defense has grown up. Now that you're seeing so many players that are playing without thinking, they're reacting, they're moving immediately. This is a much different, experienced, learned Georgia defense than we saw on Rocky Top up there in September when Tennessee seemingly scored at will throughout that game outside of a missed field goal, and why wouldn't that have changed the complexion? But Chris Cole, now that so many other players are dialed in, you can move him around a little bit more of a weapon. I expect Chris Cole to have a major postseason impact for the Georgia Bulldogs.
And what's interesting now, too, you talk about the change throughout the year. If I had to do this now, I would almost say Quintavious Johnson because of the way that these guys have grown. Gabe Harris, he's going to be in the backfield now. That wasn't necessarily the case, like you said, in games 1, 2, and 3, but it's definitely the case now.
Well, you got to like the growth. Again, it's the development. And sometimes you wonder when you go after all these high-priced transfer portal guys, oh, geez, Georgia lost Damon Wilson. He's at Missouri. What are you going to do now? And guys have just grown into that star ranking. They're fulfilling what we thought. They are who we thought they would be. It just took time, it took repetition. And Cody, you got to remember, Georgia lost 13 NFL draft picks, another 4 guys that signed as free agents. That's 17 guys that went on the train out of town into the NFL that you had to replace, plus another 7 out of the 2 deep through the transfer portal. We mentioned Damon Wilson. Oh, no big deal. Just your leading returning sack guy, and Carson Beck, who would have been a third-year starting quarterback. So you went from very experienced and very strong at 2 key positions, edge rusher and quarterback, to some really young guys that we had to watch grow up throughout the season. I think that's part of why this season feels so fulfilling and so special for the Georgia fans.
All right, so we also had most attractive red zone target. Both of us mentioned Noah Thomas. He ends up with 4 touchdowns this season, and he seems to be, I'm trying to think, is there another guy who you would pick now as most attractive red zone target. We also both mentioned Oscar Delp, who hasn't had that many touchdowns, but you see a game like Lawson Lucky, it can happen like that. We remember Oscar came on strong at the end of last year. But is there a different guy, or would you still say Noah Thomas is your most attractive red zone target?
Well, that's tough. Well, Noah hasn't been the jump ball guy that I thought he would be, but we haven't really seen the jump ball. That's not this team.
No,
this team,
they're going to run it in.
They're going to pound you, and they're going to play action. Hey, neither one of us had Rod Robinson either. He'd only played 12 snaps. He scored the first touchdown in the SEC championship game. I think the element of surprise and Mike Bobo's play calling so many different ways. I don't think there's one guy they look for. I think they line up at the line of scrimmage. Down and distance is important. What do the matchups look like? You mentioned Lawson Lucky with that 3-touchdown game. Obviously, they felt pretty good about that matchup. Now, as far as Oscar Delp, don't be fooled by his offensive numbers. I can tell you, I've talked to an NFL personnel person. Oscar Delp has built his NFL stock tremendously this year. He's in more of a conventional role at the tight end. Not always catching passes, he's doing a lot of blocking. You go back and watch that Alabama game, you're going to see 2, sometimes 3 tight ends down the field at one time. These are big, physical, athletic guys that can get into that second level, take those linebackers in the open field or safeties, and lay the block down adequately.
Really good to hear the NFL likes what they're seeing. And Kirby Smart has said as much, but like you said, the stats just aren't popping right there. All right, fan favorite we said on offense. You went with Gunnar Stockton, which I think you are still exactly right on. I thought Cash Jones. Cash Jones was actually the GOAT for a minute, and then then people loved him again. And the GOAT, not in the greatest of all time, but in the scapegoat kind of way. But Gunnar Stockton, he is everything that Georgia fans thought he would be.
Well, and the performance matches the personality. I think the thing you like about Gunnar Stockton, it certainly became even more clear after Diego Pavia's Heisman annex, is, man, the importance of having a quality guy represent your institution. And you didn't hear Gunnar Stockton, after he didn't win the award, say anything about not winning it or going. In fact, I don't even know if the words Heisman Trophy even came out of Gunnar Stockton's mouth. Not many words did come out of his mouth. Gunnar prefers to let the play speak for itself. Now, the teammates will say, hey, he does plenty of talking on the field. He'll talk a little smack on the field, but off the field, he plays his role well. He supports his teammate. He supports his coaches and his teammates likewise, and he likes to give out the credit. And to me, that's what the quarterback's job is. You want to spread the wealth on the field. You want to spread the wealth off the field. Makes for a very happy locker room and a bunch of guys that want to play for you, and that's what Georgia has.
I think we're pretty solid on a lot of these picks. This one kind of gets me, and I don't know that there's a definitive answer. Fan favorite on defense. You thought it'd be KJ Bolden. I said Justin Williams, and I don't know that. When you talk to Georgia fans, is there a guy that they are most excited about?
Probably CJ Allen.
Yeah, I think CJ would probably be the guy right there. The other category we had, this was our old dog new trick, and we didn't kind of define it. We just left it out there. You said Dylan Bell, which, boy, that old dog has had some really, really impressive games, especially down the stretch. And mine on offense was Micah Morris, who's played the third most snaps. And this was a dog who'd been here a long time. We said he needed to be the man. Boy, he has been a rock on the offensive line. Knock on wood, he stays healthy most of this year. But those are a couple of really good old dogs who played really well this season.
There's no doubt. Micah's run blocking power. You heard Tim Keenan talk about the mismatch that was coming up between the Alabama D-line. I watched Micah a few times. You might have got a little piece of Keenan there. I don't know if Alabama was too smart for running their mouth. And as far as Dylan Bell goes, we got to tip our cap to Arian Smith. Arian told us last year at the Senior Bowl and at the NFL Combine that Dylan Bell has made it his mission statement for life to redeem himself from a very difficult 2024 season. He's been much more consistent receiving the ball, and he's done a nice job running the ball. He's very effective on those jet sweeps. He's a good downfield blocker. He's been an integral part of this offense as a runner and as a receiver.
And we went old dog new trick on defense. Mike said Janelle Aguero. I had Christian Miller. Miller was a guy who we had talked about is going to have to step up. Like, there's some of those guys have moved on it. He was going to be the man. He's played a lot of snaps this year. He's been able to stay healthy. He's got 16 hurries this year of quarterback hurries, which leads the team. So he has been right there. Aguero's been on the field a lot as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen Aguero too embarrassed and caught out of position a lot of times last year. There was some assignment stuff going on, but he's such a great athlete, and there's so many different things that he can do with his talents. I mean, he's big enough to come up and play the run. He's got good enough pass coverage skills. He's quietly done his job. I think you nailed this one, Cody. Christian Miller anchors the number 4 run defense in the nation. Wow. I never saw that coming. Remember, we talked about the days of yesteryear when they were ranked number 1 or number 2 in 2020, 2021, 2022, and oh, geez, Georgia can never get back there now. Apparently, the SEC coaches didn't notice because they didn't put Kristen Miller on the first team. But this is the guy that anchored the run-stop unit, and it's more than just doing it in the games. It's doing it in the developmental aspect. Remember earlier this year when we saw him putting his arm around Elijah Griffin, the freshman, bringing this young guy along. Xavier McLeod, a transfer. He's done a better job. Now, we've seen some injuries up front. Kristen Miller has been the leader in that room, led the way, spearheaded a top 5 run defense, best run defense in the SEC, and what I believe will be the key to the national championship.
And that'll be, one of those that I think NFL people appreciate.
Like Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis didn't put up big numbers. He just did his job. And what did Jordan used to say? 2 on me, somebody's free. The same thing applies for Kristen Miller. You're starting to see C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, Chris Cole. They're able to make these plays because the big man up front is occupying 2 gaps, taking care of these blockers, and that gives these linebackers much better angles to pursue, in whether it's going after quarterbacks in the backfield on a sack or whether it's trying to stop that runner before they make the cut or get outside.
All right, next category was kind of a shot in the dark. It always is. A fantastic freshman. You're just not sure who's going to do what. This Georgia team has had a lot of freshmen make impacts and make big plays. Mike, you thought it might be C.J. Wiley. Kirby still says such good he mentions him every time. He just hadn't had his moment yet, which may still be to come. Bo Walker, if you count in the Charlotte game, he was the fantastic freshman that day, but really it's the guys on the offensive line who've been the fantastic freshmen on offense.
Well, I'll give a lot of credit to the guys on the offensive line, but the fantastic freshman to me right now, and I believe a leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, is Ellis Robinson IV. And we've watched that growth right between. Now, he was going up against Chris Brazzell, and as it turns out, Brazzell was a freak. He looked like Randy Moss against Georgia. He looked like Randy Moss against everybody. He made everybody look bad in the Tennessee game. Ellis got better, more physical, more confident. 4 interceptions. There's no other cornerback in the league with 4 interceptions, much less a redshirt freshman like Ellis Robinson. So very impressed with what he's done. I believe some awards could be coming his way before the end of the year.
And while we're talking freshmen, we should hit the news that was over the last week of the arrest of Dontrell Glover and Bo Walker. And as more details comes out, the more silly this story looks. It's cleaning supplies and it's Walmart and at the price scanner. This seems like one when we finally hear from Kirby, internal discipline kind of thing, and he's moving on.
Yeah, it's a tough position for the media to be in because there is a police log that's public out there, and when someone gets charged with something that's a public figure, it's just a matter of record to follow up, not to speculate, and no one did that. But at the same time, you're right, Cody. It just comes off as a bad headline. You don't really know the details. Once you dial in, you hope that the information that gets out there, adds some more depth to the story so people can say, oh, well, this isn't, 5 guys going in there and walking out with a TV under their arm.
Right.
This it's a scanner situation, and I don't make light of anything like that. But there's also the politics of where Walmart is involved and how they choose to prosecute. So there's a lot more to the story than meets the eye. This is something Kirby will handle internally. He's good at handling these things internally. I don't see a disruption in the Georgia preparation for the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, it's Georgia, and where would Georgia be without those freshmen, Juan Gast and Dontrell Glover on the offensive line? On defense, we thought Elijah Griffin preseason was a popular choice. I thought the same thing. And you mentioned a couple of the redshirt freshmen, Ellis Robinson. I think DeMello Jones probably goes right up there with him. True freshman, Zayden Walker, I feel like when he came on the second half of the season is when the pass rush started getting there a little more. I think he's had a huge impact, 5-star linebacker.
Well, they're finding different ways to use him, and we know that Georgia likes to get a lot of guys involved. It really beefs up their depth. You never know who's going down next, but it's just one more guy that the offense has to prep for. Oh, this guy's in the game. This is what he does well. And this is a matter of Glenn Schumann weaponizing the talent and the depth that Georgia has. If you got him, you might as well use him. Now, he may not be able to play 3 downs like a lot of the other linebackers. There's a lot of responsibilities associated with these positions. But what he does, He does really well. And again, this is a matter of Glenn Schumann weaponizing the young talent, getting them involved. And I think it also helps when it comes to retention, because now these players can see a future for themselves. They're involved, and they will now evolve.
I think on the same note there, we talked about Janelle Aguero, but unable to go to the SEC championship. Rayshon Dinkins, another true freshman, stepped in there, and a guy who hadn't had a lot of run. Boy, Matt keeps him out of the portal for sure, seeing his future on this Georgia defense. All right, talking best football player, this was kind of like guy who's going to go on to have the best NFL career. You said Zach Branch. Ding, ding, ding. You were exactly right there. Yeah. I thought Nate Frazier, I think, is still a very good football player for Georgia. I think Zachariah Branch, at least now, is going to be the sexy name as we get to NFL draft.
And I'll tell you, I'll give Nate Frazier credit. He's a different guy since the Alabama fumble in the first game inside of Georgia territory. That was a big letdown. Now, those 3 points ended up being the difference in the game. And when you're a running back, you can go back and woulda, coulda, shoulda on a lot of carries. But that one specifically, I think he has become a lot more aggressive. I think he hits the line much harder. And I had the benefit of watching the replay on the Skycam. I don't know if you've seen that replay, but you get an end zone view. Some of the cuts that Frazier was making, some of the hits that he took. I mean, this guy is running hungry right now. I'd suggest to you he's running as good as any of the running backs in the college football playoff.
I've got some boots on the ground video. Maybe we'll share it next week. I got so much. You just reminded me of a shot I have, so we're going to share that next week of Nate Frazier. Really good stuff. Best on defense, we both thought KJ Bolden. And again, it's not a guy whose name comes up a lot, but he is doing all of the right things and in the right places.
Well, if you go back and look, obviously there was the punt block, and that was huge by Cole Spear, and that was a matter of Georgia scouting. They saw where LT Overton, the defensive lineman, was injured. They noticed where he lined up in punt protection. So let's attack the new guy at that spot, and that's exactly what they did. And Cole Spear came up with that first big break in the game and made all the difference in the world. It was early momentum. It gave Georgia a short field, and Georgia was cashed in. But the second big break, I think just as big, was the Dalen Everett interception. And while Dalen's interception was unbelievable, he reaches behind him. Take a look at who tips the pass. Right. It's KJ Bolden. Right place, right time, just off the fingertip.
There
bing.
He is, yep.
And Everett catches it in stride. How many times have they done that drill in practice? Probably 1,000. So KJ in the right spot at the right time. Dalen in coverage trailing, keeping his eye on the ball. That was an amazing play, led to the second touchdown that I believe was the beginning of the end for the Crimson Tide.
All right, we're going to wrap it up here. We got to get to Chris Doring in just a moment. Most important player, you thought Gunnar Stockton, Christian Miller. I thought Gunnar Stockton. One of the other things we talked about interesting was offensive line and Drew Bobo because of the depth. We were worried even preseason about that. It turned out fine in the SEC championship game, but I guess Gunnar Stockton, there was never a doubt that he was going to be the most important player.
Well, he touches the ball every snap, just like Drew Bobo, and we did hear from the Charlotte coach that felt like Drew Bobo was the best center he had ever seen and ranked him above Dominic Raiola, a two-time All-American at Nebraska who played like 14 years in the NFL. High praise for Drew Bobo and high praise for Kirby Smart that they were able to get the backup ready to go and that it did not hurt him as much as it possibly could have if not for that depth and that coaching and Stacey Searles' work. But there's no question about it. Gunnar Stockton, his decision-making getting better as the season progressed and him really getting a feel and understanding what do you want from me? We heard so early on he doesn't want to make any mistakes. He tries to be too perfect. Yeah, but sometimes it's okay. And it's learning those moments. His running ability. Gunnar is a skilled runner, but he had to have a feel for the college game. You look at that last game, he has a jump cut move that's every bit as good as any running back you'll see in the NFL where he churns out about 8 or 9 yards and 2 or 3 were there. He's become a better runner. He's got a better feel for the pocket. I think he's got a better pocket presence, his timing, his release. He anticipates. He's in sync with his receivers. This didn't come out of the gate this way, though. This was a very slow process. I still remember the Austin Peay game. And the Austin Peay coach is like, man, we had a chance to be within one score of Georgia between the hedges in the fourth quarter. I'm like, I know. And that game was so, they scored 28 points against Austin Peay.
Right.
And then they put, they put 28 on Alabama at the end of the year, put 35 on Texas, 43 on Ole Miss. So this is a matter of Gunnar Stockton's growth. Also, Mike Bobo getting an idea how best to use Gunnar. What does he do well? What is he comfortable with? You got to trot it out there. It's all a test balloon. And now you've got a product where you have a very positive, and certain identity on offense with a quarterback who knows his job, knows what the mission is, and has really been able to execute it with very few mistakes.
So we went through this whole list now. I think you thought we might be 50%. I think we were pretty good on a lot of that. So kudos to you. That's why you listen to the show. You listen to what Mike's insight on all of that. I think one of the other names too, and this wasn't on this list, that I think people at the end of the year would be surprised if you told them this early on. But Chauncey Bowens is a player who came on strong this year. Is a name that you in practice, fall practice, we're starting to hear.
G-Day. Saw him in G-Day. He looked really good in the G-Day game, I felt like. But you hadn't heard a big build-up to Chauncey Bowens. But I thought he really provided some punch at a time when Nate needed it. After the Alabama game, there was a little bit of a letdown. Didn't play much after that. Bowens came in, really raised things up a bit. And I'll tell you, the guy emerging now is Josh McCray. And we saw Josh punch it in against Tennessee to win that game in overtime. But you thought, just a short yardage guy. Too bad they couldn't get more. Well, they are getting more out of him. And right now, he is fresh. He is strong. He is headed to the NFL. And he is hungry. So there's going to be 235 pounds of Josh McCray that's going to be coming up against Ole Miss real soon.
And the playoffs are their own season. If things go the way Georgia wants, there's 3 more games to go. And that list could even change. We may look back on it differently by the end of the season. All right, we got Chris Doring coming up on the other side. He's going to break down what's going on in the first round of the college football playoff, to break down Georgia's run to a potential national championship. We were going to get to him in just a minute. We also have Boots on the Ground still to come, but this is On the Beat, presented by Ingalls.
And it's the first title in team history. Here it is. And lightning strikes twice, back-to-back championships. 3 in a row. They've done it again.
Where did those cheese come from? Relax. They're from Ingalls.
Can I eat this now?
All right, time for another interview here on the Beat. And Mike has got so many connections all over. It's from the SEC Network, Chris Doring, former Florida Gator, who breaks down everything going on inside the Southeastern Conference, including those first-round college football playoff matchups. Mike?
Yeah, Cody, as promised, we got Chris Doring now with us. And Chris, with the SEC Network. Chris, I got to ask you about this recent college football season. It seems like so much was learned. It's not over yet, but what are your takeaways right now if we look at the playoff, where it's headed, this calendar with the coaching changes, just big takeaways?
Yeah, I think the big takeaways, obviously the competitiveness of college football, how evened out the landscape has become. When you're talking about the number 1 team in the country being Indiana and Vanderbilt winning 10 games, I think it shows you how much parity exists here in the SEC. It was kind of crazy to see all of the different teams that finished 10-2 or better, like even to the point where Vanderbilt at 10-2 gets left out. I thought this might be a season where we get a 9-3 team in, and to have not that happen, but a 10-2 team getting left out was surprising to me. But maybe the biggest surprise of all was just the hierarchy of SEC quarterbacks. I guess you can make the same statement across the entire landscape of college football in general. The guys that we thought were going to be the best quarterbacks this season did not turn out that way. DJ Lagway, news of him being in the transfer portal or potentially heading to the transfer portal when that opens up. Lenora Sellers with a disappointing year. Garrett Nussmeier having a down year. Arch Manning not really having the consistent season that we expected. And then you see Gunnar Stockton have the type of success he had this year. Joey Aguilar coming in out of nowhere and filling that void left by Nico Iamaleava. Just a really strange kind of situation with the way that the quarterback story unfolded this season.
Yeah, not exactly what anybody expected. If you look at the preseason Heisman odds and you look at who actually got voted upon, with, like you said, Pavia being a finalist, Gunnar Stockton in the mix for that, Ty Simpson for a long time among the tops in the odds. That was not necessarily supposed to happen. So we look at the college football playoff field. We know Alabama gets in, Notre Dame gets left out. There's some degree of controversy, Miami jumping Notre Dame. Do you think that this college football playoff selection committee is something that we're going to see a continuation of? And if you were going to guess what this new playoff format would look like, how many teams at a minimum would you like to see? And what do you think about the specter of a potential play-in moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident that there needs to be some expansion in the number of teams in the college football playoff field. if you look over the history of sports or just culture in general, change takes place when there's chaos, when there's somebody with power that's wronged. And in this case, I think there's two things that we're going to see change because of what's happened over the last couple of weeks. One is the college football playoff field expanding. I think it's inevitable. I think it's been inevitable that it was going to go to 14 or maybe even 16. I think that happens much sooner now with Notre Dame being left out and the debate about Texas and Vanderbilt and BYU being worthy of being included in the field. So I do think we see some sort of expanded field as early as 2026. And then also the college football calendar, with the debacle that was Lane Kiffin leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU. What has the injustice that I think occurred to the players at Ole Miss themselves. We talk about student athletes and how they're the focus of everything, but that's clearly not the case with the timeline that we have that's designed to hurry up and get players in school so you can play them right away. Meanwhile, taking away what's the most important part of life, and that's the spring semester of high school in your senior season. So I do think we're going to see a change take place with that as well because of the two things that have occurred here in the last month of the season.
So now we take a look at the college football playoff bracket, and plenty of SEC teams in there. Go through those matchups for me that we're going to see. I guess we got Ole Miss and Tulane and Alabama and Oklahoma playing in a rematch. Texas A&M playing against Miami next weekend. How do you see those games playing out?
Yeah, I hate that we get rematches, particularly the rematch of Ole Miss and Tulane, given the outcome was 5 touchdown margin of victory for the Rebels. I watched the tape last night. There's a distinct advantage on the line of scrimmage when it comes to protecting the quarterback, when it comes to opening holes for Kejuan Lacey and for Trinidad Chambliss to run. When it comes to one-on-one matchups, I was surprised at how much Tulane played as many snaps of man coverage as they did, trying to match up with a really talented group of receivers and Daquan Wright at the tight end position. I don't think that there's, this may be a closer ball game, but I don't think it's 5 touchdowns closer. So I expect Ole Miss, despite all the uncertainty and chaos they've been dealing with, to win that game and advance to the Sugar Bowl to take on Georgia and New Orleans. And then, Alabama, Oklahoma, it was a tremendous ball game. But I think the dynamic still exists where it's a bad matchup for Alabama. They're one-dimensional on offense. They haven't been able to run the ball to take any pressure off of Ty Simpson. And speaking of pressure, they haven't been able to protect to keep him from getting pressured by opposing defenses. I feel like LSU kind of laid the blueprint out there for how you disrupt the offense in terms of setting up advantageous blitz situations, primarily against running backs who have not been very good in pass protection over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Oklahoma did it. You saw Auburn do it, and certainly Georgia did it in the SEC championship game. So I expect that to be the same blueprint for success. And everybody says, well, as long as Alabama doesn't turn the football over, they'll be okay. They turned the football over because Oklahoma made them turn the football over. A strip sack with a tackle getting beaten in one-on-one protection, setting up a situation, again, where you had one of your best blitzers on a running back and being able to force a hot route that was intercepted and returned for a touchdown. So those are things that I think, are going to exist here. Until you can prove that you can beat the blitz, teams are going to do it over and over again. And Oklahoma certainly is one of the best when it comes to creating pressure on opposing passers.
Now, Texas A&M, probably the hardest team to call, I would guess, just because they were such a Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, the first half against South Carolina, the second half against South Carolina. There's plenty of incentive there. They lost their final game of the regular season against a Miami team that earlier this year I thought looked better than anyone, win in the tank, finished strong, questionable competition. So you've seen enough of Carson Beck and you've seen enough of Texas A&M. I know this is probably a little bit more of a lottery pick for you, but which way do you go on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you mentioned Jekyll and Hyde, and here we are. You're right about that within games, but they're 11-1, one of the best seasons in that school's history, obviously losing a final regular season game with a chance to go 12-0 to your biggest rival. It's not the way that, they wanted to finish the season, but I do think that this is a team that can beat you in a number of different ways. I do worry about their susceptibility against the run. They've given up 200 yards or more in 4 different games this season. Arkansas was one that kind of stands out in my mind where that offensive line was able to open up some gaping holes. So I do think it's going to be a battle of physicality on the lines of scrimmage. And you mentioned Carson Beck. My co-host on SEC This Morning, Peter Burns, said, hey, Carson Beck's been in these kind of environments before when he was at Georgia. Yeah, that may be the case, but I'm not worried about the quarterback as much as I am the people around him. The inability to communicate when you're the center, trying to set the defense, when you're trying to slide protections, when you're trying to communicate down the line, tackles not being able to get off as quick because they can't hear the snap count or have to delay a second on the silent count. That gives guys like Cassius Howell just a heartbeat to be able to get after the quarterback. And we've seen when Carson Beck has a bad game, it's a really bad game. So I do think, even though this is an 11 a.m. local start, that crowd's going to have a lot to do with the outcome of the ball game. And I'm anxious to see early on, one, can Miami run the football against Texas A&M's defense? And two, can Texas A&M crank up their pressure and force Carson Beck into some mistakes that we've seen from him before?
Yeah, sounds like they're going to have to run the ball for Miami to win from that take. Now, you haven't mentioned Georgia yet. Now, last year, Georgia was in this situation where they had a long layoff. And obviously that didn't work out well for Georgia or any of the teams that had a long layoff. What do you think Kirby Smart can do differently? And how do you see that game playing out? And let's just go ahead and presume, I know it's always dangerous, but if it is Ole Miss, it's a rematch. Rebels against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl.
It was surprising to see Georgia out-physicaled last year in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. Rarely are they the less physical team on any field that they step onto. I think that's probably stuck in the craw of Kirby Smart and that entire team since last year. So, being able to come back and prove their level of physicality, they've gotten better. I think this team, from where they started at the beginning of the year, how they've evolved with Gunnar Stockton, being one of the best quarterbacks in the conference and his dual threat capabilities, to how they've been able to run the ball more the last month of the season, dominance on the offensive line and creating more disruption on the defensive line. We're starting to see them look like a Georgia team of the past. So I think they're kind of peaking now, whereas I felt last year they were kind of limping into the postseason, particularly after Carson Beck's injury right for half of the SEC title game. I think in terms of the matchup, it was interesting because Ole Miss was able to go up and down the field in that first ball game at Athens, 35 points in the first three quarters. But that 9-point lead evaporated in the final quarter of the game when Georgia was able to get some stops finally and was able to really out-physical Ole Miss's defense by running the ball right down their throat. So I do think it's going to be an exciting game. I expect Ole Miss to win the game against Tulane and set up a rematch in New Orleans. But what an awesome environment, man. The SEC champion going to New Orleans, the Sugar Bowl, the way it's always been. Ole Miss being there, a team that travels really well, particularly to New Orleans. So really look forward to that ball game. But I picked Georgia to win the national championship. So I expect them to beat Ole Miss and continue on to ultimately being the one to hold up the trophy at the end of the year.
Who do you think they're going to run into in the, I guess it would be the Fiesta Bowl and then obviously in the national championship game in Miami Gardens?
So probably Ohio State, I think in the semis is the way it kind of sets up right now, I believe. And then I actually have them beating Oklahoma. And I know that's probably not a very popular take, but Oklahoma to me has a national championship worthy defense. They've got the best kicker in the country in Tate Sandell. The offense has let them down, particularly since the injury to John Mateer occurred. But here's the deal. Just don't put us in a bad situation. I mean, LSU in the final game of the season only scored one touchdown. And that was after, an interception set the LSU offense up at the 33-yard line. They had a 33-yard drive for a touchdown and two 42-yard drives for field goals. Outside of that, they didn't move the ball at all. So I don't see teams being able to go up and down the field consistently against Oklahoma's defense. And by the way, that was with our Mason Thomas being out. We expect him to be back. So if they can get any sort of positive production on offense, I think they have a chance to kind of be that Baltimore Ravens. What was that, 2000, when they won the Super Bowl, primarily through their defense and just use Trent Dilfer as kind of a game manager. I see that kind of playing out with Georgia ultimately beating their SEC foe in the national title game.
Chris, with your work on the SEC Network and SEC Now, the variety of SEC network programs, you could bullet point probably 3 or 4 programs to win the national championship. What does the Georgia resume look like in the end? I mean, you talked about the matchup with Ole Miss and playing a good defensive team, but if we're just looking at the Georgia resume, what makes Georgia a national champion this year?
Let's talk about the resume of Kirby Smart. Unfortunately, he's going to be overlooked for Coach of the Year just about every single season because of the expectation, because of the idea that, the recruiting and the talent assembly is so much better than everywhere else. But I look at the way that this team has come along this year, and that includes, the job that Mike Bobo and Glenn Schumann have done. This offense has gotten better and better, and I know that there's a lot of grumblings amongst the Georgia fans about how predictable and conservative the offense can be. But I look at how they've changed this year with the ability to run the football more with the quarterback. I just think this team, you go back and look, it wasn't overwhelming opposing quarterbacks with sacks and pressure. They've had to do things differently. Glenn Schumann, about a month ago started using a little bit more linebacker pressure and secondary pressures to create some of that disruption. I just think that this coaching staff has done a really good job of developing young talent, putting them in positions to be successful, and changing what they've done. I think they feel more comfortable playing man coverage now than they did early in the season because of the development of some of their younger defensive backs. But this is not a team that necessarily has been able to protect their secondary with pass rush like they have in years past. But yet they find a way to go 11-1 and win the SEC championship and put themselves in position to get a bye in the first round of the playoff.
High praise of Mike Bobo from a receiver from the Fun and Gun that revolutionized the SEC, set the record with touchdown catches that lasted a long, long time. Was it 28 years, CD? Held that
25
record?
years until Devontae Smith broke it. I still hold the Florida record, but to think about having been the leader in career touchdown receptions for 25 years as a guy that walked on originally and ended up doing what I had a chance to do, just very grateful for that experience and certainly grateful to Coach Spurrier for putting me in positions to be successful.
Chris, I really appreciate you joining us, man. It's always fun. We'll be tuned into the SEC Network to see how it turns out. And everybody in Georgia certainly hoping your prediction of the Dogs winning it all. I believe you got a lot of fans behind that and on board with you.
Yeah, I believe in it, man. It's I have a lot of respect for the Georgia program and the coaches that Coach Smart has assembled and what he's done with this team. I think more people need to talk about the coaching job that he's done himself this season.
No doubt. Chris, thanks for your time, man. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, you got it. Back to you, Cody.
Really good stuff right there. We appreciate Chris Doring being on the show. Mike, I love how you know all these guys, and you can always bring them on our show and get their insight.
Well, there's some advantages to being a little bit older, and Chris is a guy that I got to cover in the 1990s. He was a fantastic football player for the Gators in the Fun and Gun. I never really knew the story that he was a walk-on from the town of Gainesville, and Spurrier is almost like a father figure to Chris. So I mean, this award that we have going, this is near and dear to Chris Doring's heart. And let's face it, Florida hadn't really had that much to celebrate since Spurrier was there. So they like gathering around, and Chris is very involved in that. And of course, the work that he does on the SEC Network and with Peter Burns and the SEC Network football final, I think he does an unbelievable job. He has a great passion for it. And you were a bit surprised the love and respect that he has for the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart.
Yeah, because I feel like, especially sitting on this desk where Brandon sits every day and just spews Florida hate, the respect coming the other way was actually a very, very nice thing. All right, so we got a couple more segments to get to here before we wrap up on the beat, and one of them is Boots on the Ground. All right, so obviously no game that we shot this last week that we're going to show you, but we have some stuff kind of built up that I do want to share with you, including a great story. But before we get to that, let's talk about Colby Young. He's one of those things that we thought he was done for the season after he gets injured against Ole Miss. I think Kirby Smart will tell you he even thought that, but it's one of those things that's kind of come up now. Could Colby Young start to make a return? So here's what it looked like against the Ole Miss. Second half, he was wrapped up. This was October 18th. So there he was. We thought, okay, maybe that's bad news. The next couple weeks later at Florida on November 1st, he was on the scooter. Okay, so then what did he look like at the SEC championship game? Well, as we were standing there doing our DawgNation game day show with Kaylee and Jeff Sintel, I look over and, well, there he is. He's in the walking boot. He's looking pretty good. He gives this ball a kick with his good foot, but it got everybody thinking, Colby Young, he is now 58 days away from that injury against Ole Miss. That's like 8 weeks. Like, could he be back, especially if Georgia makes a run here to a national championship? Something that came up on the Sugar Bowl call. Here's what Kirby Smart had to say about it.
You know, Anthony, I don't know. I know we went over some injuries today, and his name came up. I think it would be a stretch, and we're so far off. I was not thinking of being able to get him back when the injury occurred in the initial timeline. There has been some optimism with his rehab and his recovery, but it was more for after the initial game if we were able to advance. Again, I don't know. I think we'll find out over the next 20-something days. We'll find a lot more out.
All right, Mike, you're the king of decoding Kirby Smart. What does that tell you?
Well, I don't think he wants to get ahead of himself, and
Okay.
I don't think he wants to put any pressure on Colby Young, but obviously Kirby Smart, I would say very, very guardedly optimistic that perhaps in a championship game scenario you could see Colby Young, but obviously this is not a Kirby Smart decision. This is a training staff decision, and it's a credit to Colby Young that he's worked that hard. There's so much that goes into this physical therapy. Number one, though, is the guys going in there and being very disciplined and not missing any treatments. And you saw with your own eyes, thanks to Cody's boots on the ground, just how far this guy's progressed in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and he stayed locked in the whole time. That's been the other part of this is he wanted to travel with the team to Florida and be on the field with that team. There's plenty of guys, and I think what happened was he missed the second half of last year, and he knows how tough it is to sit out, and that's probably why he's been so disciplined. He missed the run to the college football playoff in the SEC championship a year ago, and he's missed it again, but I think he may have something to prove here before he worries about what he's going to do at the combine if he can compete there or a pro day.
Well, and it proves something in the NFL too, because this is a big thing for NFL guys. I mean, if unless you were living under a rock, you'd see what Matthew Stafford is doing in his 17th year in the NFL with all the back problems that he had. He went through so many different treatments, wasn't able to train in the preseason on the field with the team, but still being diligent, still staying up with everything. And now he's having an NFL MVP campaign. So NFL teams take note of these things. How do guys recover? How disciplined are they? Is their head still in the huddle? All these things go into being a great NFL player and come into the equation when you're trying to pick between two guys. Maybe Colby slips between third and fourth, or maybe even fifth round with the injury. I don't know what degree of testing he'll be able to do, but when you're trying to weigh his upside versus someone else, this is something that you will take into consideration. And this is another reason why so many Georgia guys get drafted.
Yeah, and we'll see if Georgia has an open practice. We'll maybe get the next look at Colby Young and what he looks like. Is he beyond the boot now? It's been.
You mean an open practice or an open yoga session?
Maybe if he's doing yoga, that could be impressive.
Do people know the story that there's a mandatory open practice session that the coaches really don't like?
Right, that the Sugar Bowl or in the college football play is going to make the coaches do whether they like it or not.
They don't want to do it because they don't want to show anything. So Kirby came up with his own way of avoiding showing anything by having a yoga session during the open part. Because he said, well, you can tell me I got to open it up, but you can't tell me what I'm going to do during the open session.
And they've done other things too where they mixed up position groups and changed people's jerseys. He has a lot of fun with it. So we'll see if we actually get anything when that happens inside the Superdome in New Orleans. All right. The other part of Boots on the Ground, again, not a game last week, but there's a story that's been going on with this Georgia team that had not been told until our Jeff Sintel did some really great reporting on DawgNation.com this week about Earnest Greene, his father and his family, and what they've been going through over the last few weeks. It's one of those stories that started, and we'll start with our Boots on the Ground. This is at the Mississippi State game. Some video I had, actually shared it with Kaylee on the DawgNation Game Day show. I do a little Boots on the Ground segment there. It's Juan Gaston, and the other man with the glasses right there. That's Big Earnest Greene's father. And those two men, both really accomplished athletes in their own right. Earnest Greene, Big Earnest, played in the NFL. Juan Gaston, of course, famous college basketball player. And so those guys just chopping it up. I thought that was a really cool moment at the Mississippi State game. Well, the next game for Georgia was the Texas game. And it was the night before the Texas game that the news came out, at least subtly, not out there. But Jeff Sintel found out that, well, Earnest Greene's father had a blockage and an artery that leads to his brain, had to go to the hospital. This is the Friday night before the game in Athens against Texas. So this is Earnest Greene at that Texas game. We found out after the fact, thanks to Jeff's reporting, Kirby Smart let him leave the team hotel, let him go visit his father inside the hospital. Then he comes back, and he is a part of this huge win, maybe one of the biggest wins of the season, taking down Texas. And I kind of was clued in. Jeff told me because Jeff has become friends with this family. He went out to L.A. during Earnest Greene's recruitment and met the family. And Big Earnest is always right on the front row. We see him every Saturday between the hedges on the front row watching his son play. Well, he wasn't there, and Jeff kind of clued me in. So I was following Earnest Greene, and you can just tell it was an emotional day for him. So after the game, when everybody's going crazy, well, Earnest goes right over to where his dad normally sits, and he kneels down and prays. And it was just a super emotional moment. And I tried to keep a little distance to let him have his space, but you just kind of forget sometimes what all of these guys are going through, and what an emotional time. It was the night before he's at his dad's hospital bed. Now, the good news we can share with you is that Big Earnest right now is still working through his recovery, has not been able to make it back to a game thus far. After the SEC championship, Big Earnest has been transferred to Atlanta in a hospital there. Earnest was able to go take him his hat and his T-shirt he got on the celebration at the SEC championship, give it to his dad, who is responsive at this point. His dad is working through his physical therapy. His goal is to be at a national championship parade for his son. But there's a little boots on the ground. It's a video I didn't want to show until the family agreed that they wanted this story out there. And it was not out there until Jeff, like we said, reported it this week. Kirby Smart did talk, though, after the Georgia Tech game about what Earnest Greene was going through. Take a listen to what Kirby had to say.
Ernest is such a tough kid, man. He's going through a lot right now. His family and his dad, and he won't quit. He's there for his teammates. The guy competes so hard and wanted to be out there with them, and just so much respect for his toughness and his leadership.
You can tell it means a lot to Kirby Smart to see Earnest Greene out there, but just a very emotion-filled moment for Earnest Greene, going to where his dad normally sits and having a prayer after the Texas game, and we're certainly keeping the Greene family in our prayers.
Well, you know, when I talked with Earnest out there at St. John Bosco a couple years ago, and he was being recruited by Ohio State, they were the leader in the clubhouse at the time. One of the reasons he wanted to come to Georgia was that he has a lot of family in South Carolina, and he wanted to be close to his family. And, you know, as it turns out, it's very good that he's close to his family. There are great benefits to being close to family members that were from South Carolina. Again, he went to high school out there, but a lot of family in the Southeast, and now you see there's a lot of family, obviously, in that Georgia clubhouse.
And it's something that you always remember, too, is like we see these guys with their helmets on, and they're just the gladiators in the arena, but these are real life stuff going on with all of these guys that we, sometimes overlook to remember. Yeah, these are real young men out there playing this game.
Yeah, he's a really impressive kid. You know, that when I talked to him, we actually had a conversation about NIL. I was talking to him about some next level stuff that happened, and he's quite an intellectual. Ernest's a really bright guy. Obviously, he has been through a lot with his injuries, not just the recent family issues, but this is a guy that's battled through injuries the whole time, that came in with very high expectations, and I thought he's done a really exemplary job as a leader in that room, but also at the right tackle position. Georgia's been able to run the ball pretty much left to right. It doesn't really seem to matter too much.
If you want more details on what's going on with that story, you can check out Jeff's reporting. It's on DawgNation.com. You'll be able to see that there. All right, so that is our boots on the ground for this week. Again, we got some more stuff saved up from throughout the season we'll be able to share with you as we lead up to the Sugar Bowl. But after we do boots on the ground, we always got to follow it up with Mike's 30,000-foot view. So, Mike, you hit with Chris Doring some of these big SEC topics. One of the things he just kind of drops in there is, Florida may have a guy leaving there in the quarterback. It might be entering the transfer portal.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if DJ Lagway leaves Florida, you wonder where he would go. Number one, will he actually go through with it? This is job number one for John Summerall, I think, as he tries to coach two different teams. Cody, my big takeaway from the playoff was, this is so messed up. This is so wrong. And they said, well, no, wait a minute. These playoffs have really been enlightening. We've gotten to see exactly who and what Lane Kiffin is. He has shown who he really, not the 30-minute special, not the made-for-TV special, but how does he handle this? Does he put himself in front of the team and send his family for public interviews at other campuses? Does he turn it into, yes, he does. Maybe a little narcissistic trait at work here. Notre Dame, this is a program for decades, Cody. We've always said, Notre Dame, they just seem to carry themselves like they're big. No, they really do think they're better than everybody. And you have gotten a clear picture of that now that Notre Dame has said, well, we're not going to even take part in a bowl game if we're not in the playoff. Never mind that they make their own schedule and that they don't have to adhere to any conference rules or play in a conference championship game. When things don't work Notre Dame's way, they go south. I think the general public has seen that as a result of it. And then finally, this whole Vanderbilt fiasco. Now, when Clark Lee beat Alabama last year, I was like, okay, let's tip of the cap. Georgia won the SEC. Let's give one to old Clark. But when the SEC coaches vote this guy the SEC Coach of the Year over Kirby Smart this year, I got a problem with it because I get out the magnifying glass and I look a little closer and I see 15 graduate transfers in the starting line. These are like 24-year-old men. And Georgia's coaching up freshmen and sophomore, replacing 17 guys to go to the NFL, another 7 to leave. This was one hell of a job by Kirby Smart. And winning back-to-back SEC championships, only the 4th coach in history to do that, and becoming the coach in SEC history to reach 100 wins faster than anybody. And we're going to pretend like Kirby Smart's not the SEC coach. Give me a break with the pettiness and jealousy. That is the 30,000-foot view.
Yeah, you do. You seem to, and it's clockwork. This time every year, Kirby Smart has taken his team to the SEC championship, and he gets snubbed for all these coaching awards.
He's supposed to win, right? I mean, but you need supposed to. You still got to go to work. You still got to recruit. You still got to replace bodies. And oh, by the way, I see these headlines now. So and so wins 3rd place. I'm going to start telling people, hey, did you win it? No, I didn't. You know what? I won 4th place in it. No, there's one winner, okay? And the guy that wins holds the trophy. Can we get away from, no offense, AYSO soccer, but not everybody can be winners. There's one winner, and I'd like to see the winner's crown because, 50, 75 years from now, when they open the history books up and they go, oh, who was the coach of the year? Oh, it was Clark. Oh, did he win? No. Oh, he must have made the playoff. No, didn't do that either. Oh, well, no, it was actually Kirby Smart. Well, wait a minute. How do they judge things in 2025? You mean the best coach isn't the guy with the 1st place team? Well, surely then, Cody, he must have had a ton of talent. Well, not really, because the coaches only said there was one position player on offense and defense at Georgia to make 1st team. So what is it? Is it that Kirby's supposed to win because he has all this talent? No, there's only one guy that made 1st team. Okay, well, if there's only one guy that made 1st team, then he must have done a great job. Well, no, actually, we're going to give that to the guy with the Heisman Trophy finalist that didn't make the playoff, that started 15 graduate transfers. Yeah, great job.
I didn't mean to poke you there, but I always enjoy it. We talk about Lagway transfer portal. Dylan Raiola, who was once committed to Georgia, now in the transfer portal out of Nebraska. Georgia obviously doesn't get the 5-star Jared Curtis. Is there... I mean, those guys have started. I don't think they're coming to Georgia. You feel like Georgia will pick up a quarterback, though, in the portal? They need some depth after losing that guy?
And let me tell you, there's a silver lining to this Jared Curtis thing. And listen, the guy's a fantastic talent. There's no denying that. You can't help but love the way this kid plays. He's big, he's fast, he's physical, he throws the ball great. But think about all the money that was going to go to him that is now freed up for retention and for other portal players as a result of this. And then also think about the way Gunnar Stockton grew and just how effective we imagine he'll be next year and how solid that position is. I don't know that you really needed that impact freshman guy that you were going to pay all this money to just for 2 years. And as a silver lining, maybe now Ryan Puglisi sticks around him. This is a very talented quarterback that's one snap away. We saw it last year with Gunnar Stockton going in. We saw it with Stetson Bennett. I mean, who knows? Before it's said and done, Ryan Puglisi could be a championship quarterback at Georgia. So I don't think that loss was maybe as great as it seemed in the moment when you step back and look at how these resources can be spread out and how Georgia always seems to recover from these sorts of things.
All right, so as we wrap up On the Beat today, we get ready for a college football playoff. This time next week, we will be breaking down the matchup. We will know who Georgia is going to play.
Ole Miss. Sorry, spoiler.
Yeah, we could be surprised, but I doubt we'll be a surprise. So it'll be Georgia and probably Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. We'll be breaking that down for you as we get ready for Christmas week, and then we will be in New Orleans bringing you all of that action. So appreciate Mike being in studio and dressing up for us today as we had the most sophisticated version of On the Beat we have ever had. We appreciate Chris Doring for joining us today, and we'll see you right back here next Monday night on The Beat.